Flat Earth tackles. Anyone dealing with the topic of flat Earth needs to rethink. No human or rocket has ever left his Earth. Concepts that have been internalized by schools and the media need to be questioned. The same applies to the historiography of theoretical science in general and astrophysics in particular. This essay refers to mainstream knowledge and sets this in relation to the concept of a flat Earth. It shakes the foundations of conventional astrophysics. The term flat Earth is used here because no curvature is measurable, but it must be pointed out that the actual shape of the Earth has not been definitively proven and only fragments and clues exist, which nevertheless result in a usable model. What is certain is that the Earth is not a sphere in the sense that people are taught in the synchronized schools and universities in all supposedly independent countries. In all probability we live in a closed system, a flat plane with a firmament above it. The flat Earth model itself, fake history, or why space agencies such as NASA are a complete fraud will not be discussed in detail here. There are other videos about this on my channels or website. We are very much influenced by concepts that are used to establish the current world view. We often use words without realizing that they are mere concepts with no connection to reality on this earth. Words that destroyed the relationship with creation and threw man out into the dark nothingness of a vast universe. The ancient Greek ether was a theoretical philosophical concept. The fifth element. This concept is still used today in the Hindu or Buddhist religion as akasha, in Hinduism as space, and in Buddhism as radiation. Ancient Greek astronomy was completely separate from physics at this time. It was only much later that Nicholas Copernicus introduced physics into astronomy. René Descartes and Isaac Newton used a different concept of the ether to explain what was going on in the heavens. This concept of the ether was semi-physical. Michael Faraday, the inventor of the Tesla coil, used the term field to describe a semi-physical ether. There were various ether theories until Albert Einstein came up with his idea of relativity and space-time, which denied an ether. But he also postulated some kind of an ether in his 1920 speech. Quantum physics postulated a space ether. Further details on this topic can easily be found in the history of physics and the underlying philosophical and metaphysical aspects. The fact is that in physics, an ether has always been used in theoretical concepts that postulated a space with a vacuum. The ether is and has always been part of theoretical science. Empirical science, that which is based on reproducible findings, does not need an ether at all. Empirical science uses the concept of fields with different properties. Empirical science is the craft of the inventive engineer, the true natural philosopher. We don't know what water actually is, and yet we use it every day. We don't know what light is, but we know what you can do with it, and so a DVD player is built with laser light. We don't know what electricity is, and yet we don't want to do without our fridge. We also have little idea what magnetic fields are based on, and yet everyone wants the password for WLAN. Water, electricity, magnetism. All phenomena that people make use of without really understanding them. However, through observation, deduction, trial and error, methods have been found to utilize and to a certain extent control these phenomena. Formulas have been found that work to such an extent that they can be used but do not necessarily have to be true. This is empirical science. Theoretical science, on the other hand, deals with the explanations of the cause of these phenomena, and it seems to have been at an impasse for decades. Since Einstein's new concept and crude quantum mechanics through to string theory, which is now considered a field for errant unemployed physicists, there have been no significant new groundbreaking findings, only the systems have become smaller and more complex. Today, we understand very little of the underlying laws of nature and interrelationships, and even of the little we do understand, there are different variants. Decisions in theoretical sciences are always based on consensus. The majority or the financier determines what should apply. mostly assumptions that cannot be verified for physical reasons, because no one has ever left this earth. Ether has had so many different meanings throughout history that it needs a clear definition before we can talk about it. A nothingness in which something is supposed to be is a contradiction in itself, and this leaves ample scope for business-promoting interpretations and charlatanry. On a metaphysical level, however, there seems to be something like a morphogenetic field, and this concept is again similar to that of the ancient scriptures. It is the question of what holds matter together, what creates reality, and how various other paraphysical phenomena can be explained. But here too, research is still in its infancy. Outer space, infinite vastness. The few ancient Greeks who believed that there was space above the sky were wrong, and also Aristotle's concept of the spherical earth. All wrong. Aristotle's ideas were not common knowledge among the ancient Greeks, and the concept was long forgotten. Giordano Bruno, René Descartes, Isaac Newton and others thought that there was a space. This is the underlying premise, the idea of a space of nothingness that needs a medium to explain how the light of the stars can travel. This is still a hypothetical concept today. Space, a place of dark nothingness. Even today, some say that the universe is expanding. Others say that the universe is infinite. One excludes the other. Only something of a certain size can expand, and infinity has no size. Space outside the Earth was and is a theoretical concept. This also applies to the ether. There is no proof of space, and there is no proof of an ether as used in physics. The experiments of Michelson and Morley at the time, assuming such an ether, were done based on the underlying model of the time, and this model was wrong. The entire theoretical concept of our universe from the Greeks to the present day is wrong, because there is no space. The ancient Greeks were wrong, Isaac Newton and his friends were wrong, Albert Einstein and his friends were wrong, and Max Planck and his friends were wrong. There is no space and no vacuum. Outer space and vacuum are assumptions, and those were wrong. It seems blasphemous to say this, and yet I do, because there is no proof of an outer space. It is all made up by scientific explanations of what we can see and measure anywhere from Earth. Theoretical science, especially astrophysics, has been wrong from the beginning. Everyone can judge for themselves on the basis of the evidence whether this was deliberately controlled in this way. It is mathematized occultism of celestial phenomena based on assumptions and assertions, stamped into the minds of generations by schools and universities brought into line. The takeover of all schools, universities, and the entire academic establishment by the controllers before our time is a topic in its own right. This imprint has and has had a profound impact on human self-understanding and experience of life in this realm of existence. As already mentioned, we are talking here about theoretical and not empirical science. These two completely different areas should not be confused. Empirical science needs neither outer space nor any ether or invisible medium. Mixing empirical science with theoretical science is what the media priests of science do when they drop a microphone on the ground to prove the theory of gravity. They use empirical knowledge, the knowledge of a phenomenon, and claim to have proven a theoretical assumption, but it is only an assertion, a preferred explanation for the phenomenon of gravity, for which there are also other explanations. Vacuum is a concept and means empty space, a word that has only been used since the 18th century. It is the counterpart of the idea of a black hole with infinite mass. Vacuum is the complete and absolute absence of matter in a space. There is no vacuum on Earth, no absolute negative pressure. It is only an idea of a property of empty space. It is a theoretical model, a concept of nothingness with properties. There is no such thing on Earth. We always have a pressure and are always surrounded by fields. Compared to what we can see and measure here on Earth, the assumption of a space, a nothing, requires the existence of a medium. As it can then no longer be nothing, it is also called a vacuum. Today, the term vacuum is often used as a synonym for negative pressure, although there is a big difference. There is no proof of a vacuum anywhere, only evidence of different pressure systems. The vacuum chambers that exist on Earth today are not capable of creating anything even approaching an absolute vacuum. A large negative pressure is not a vacuum. Such negative pressure chambers rather show how much nature strives for balance. Therefore, the explanation that the Earth's weak gravity should hold an atmosphere that naturally wants to expand into this vacuum is also very illogical. Newton's laws of thermodynamics work here on Earth, but with the atmosphere, a pressure system without a container that is exposed to a vacuum, you just make an exception. Well, yes. Who benefits from it? On Earth there is always a medium and magnetic fields, even in low-pressure environments. To assume that the existence of an unproven vacuum requires a medium and then say that we need the same kind of invisible medium here on Earth is a fallacy. It is the same with light. Light on Earth and the supposed light in a fantasized universe filled with nothing is not the same. The stars we see in the firmament are also not millions of years old, because the light supposedly took so long to travel through space. Without space, the question of a medium in a vacuum does not arise, and it can be assumed that empirical research would be much further along if it were not hindered by the claims of theorists. Light could just as well be something other than a particle or a wave. That is why the double-slit experiment has no significance whatsoever. It only shows a phenomenon. Particle or wave is a conclusion, an assumption to explain the phenomenon. There are also other explanations. The patterns you see are not the wave or the particle itself. You cannot measure a particle or a wave itself. The term wave itself is wrong, because a wave is actually three-dimensional in the real world. A two-dimensional wave does not exist on our Earth. A spiral also looks like a wave if you only see it in 2 dimensions. You mix apples and oranges and try to make plum jam out of them. The same applies to particle accelerators. These machines measure effects, never the thing itself, and scientists use interpretations and assumptions based on their worldview to explain these effects. The claim that light is a wave or a particle was an assumption from the beginning. It doesn't even have to be either one. It's just a theory. The assumption that the speed of light is constant is what it is, an assumption. Measurements of the speed of light on Earth differ, so the constant had to be established and fixed in 1972. This constant is based on the assumption that space, the vacuum, and its assumed properties exist. Gravity is a word that comes from the word weight. The theory of gravity is a concept used to explain the movement of stellar masses in the firmament. However, this theory is not necessary to explain the Earth's gravity. The necessary postulation of 95% dark matter and energy in the equations for calculating mass ratios in supposedly existing galaxies shows that something cannot be right. Infinity is a religious as well as a mathematical concept, a construct that has no relation to reality. Everything on Earth is finite. Everything. At some point, the last grain of sand and the last molecule of air will be counted. Everything exists fluctuating in finite numbers. A clue as to why whole numbers are so important to some occult groups. The infinity of the universe is just as much an assertion as the infinity of existing celestial bodies. We ourselves do not know infinity on earth. It only exists in metaphysical concepts in our heads. The flat Earth and current theoretical astrophysics do not fit together. Since the existence of outer space has not been proven and still cannot be proven, nor its properties, we need to rethink our relationship to theoretical astrophysics. We could just as well be surrounded by water, as some ancient writings claim. The assumption of some ancient Greeks, however, was that there was an empty universe above the sky. All later assumptions are based on this first assumption. If the first assumption is wrong, then all later, related assumptions are also wrong, and all specially created concepts to explain space are also products of fantasy. Terms such as vacuum, ether, gravity, created by mass or curvature of space, light years, and all other terms created to explain the concept of space are labels for things that do not exist, works of delusion, and should not be confused with reproducible science. Why speak of an ether in space if there is no space? Faraday's concept of fields is better suited to explore an electric universe. Why use light years if there is no space? Light rather seems to be a potential difference. Why use vacuum if there is no space? Nothingness has never been proven. Why use the astrophysical definition of gravity if the Earth is not a sphere and space does not exist? The phenomenon of gravity or weight can be explained just as well with electrostatics and coherent magnetism. Just as the flat Earth cannot be explained with a Copernican model of the solar system, phenomena of the flat Earth cannot be explained with concepts of astrophysics. Other concepts are needed. It is also clear that some people tend to replace these with religious concepts. The Earth is not a disk flying around in space. In fact, we don't even know what is 15,000 kilometers above our heads. And we don't know what is 15 kilometers below us, and just as little about what is outside the Antarctic ice ring. There are very strong indications of a firmament, but it is unclear what it is made of. It is equally unclear whether we are alone or whether there are other areas that have their own life-supporting magnetic field pockets and are all on the same plane or similar. But we can say with certainty that we are being lied to by official bodies about where we all are, with solid evidence. Everything people are told is conjecture based on assumptions and theories. If you look, you can see how shaky this theoretical world is. It is a common assumption that people who do not believe in a globe do so because they have no idea what they are talking about. However, the opposite is true. In order to recognize the contradictions in the current heliocentric model, you have to look at it and compare it with what empiricism, i.e. comprehensible experience here on Earth, teaches us. We cannot avoid thinking about fundamental concepts that are deeply rooted in our beings. Nothingness, the universe, the ether, the attraction of bodies, the speed of light. History and the timelines themselves are, as I said, equally questionable. The consequences of 150 years of controlled and manipulated science are egregious and devastating. It changes the meaning of human existence, life, and our relationship to our environment and our thinking in such a way that we can hardly imagine what we would be without this history. And that may well be the reason for these lies. That was a contribution from Chnopfloch. Thank you for listening. This podcast is released into the public domain in the sense of copyleft. The creator waives all legal claims. Further podcasts, videos and articles, and if you like my work, a tip jar, can be found at www.chnopfloch.ch. Thank you. Best regards, Chnopfloch.